The Downtown Rams podcast is brought to you by our proud sponsors, Rams on Demand, SeatGiant, Throwback Joe, and now our new sponsor, Kayvon Webster's new LA food truck, VYBE 305, from South Beach to Sunset. Hashtag catch a vibe. For more information, check out vibe305.com today. Now enjoy the show.
35-30, Robert Woods, first down 20, 10-5, touchdown, LA! No, it's Goff who keeps it, and Goff goes crashing into the end zone. Aaron Donald almost beat the football there and comes away with his third sack of the afternoon. Not immediately in sack. Corey Littleton, have yourself a day. Todd Gurley, 20, 10, Gurley for MVP, touchdown LA! And he gets gobbled up. Savage has to eat it as Michael Brockers picks up the sack.
It's Pitts! Nicole Roby coming!
He's decked by Eden Khan.
Touchdown! Brandon Cooks! Incredible!
For the first time since 2003, the Rams are NFC West champions.
Welcome back, guys, to another Downtown Rams podcast, episode 120. I am joined here by Joe Curley, and this is the post-game, long-awaited post-game. I know I've gotten a lot of comments, complaints about that, but we are here. We are going to talk about the Rams taking down the Raiders 33-13. Thank you so much, Joe, for taking the time. I know we've already had a really busy week so far, so glad to be able to get this out there.
Back in football mode. This is game week 2.
You aren't kidding. You aren't kidding at all. I'm already feeling it. The writers at Downtown Rams, we're trying to get as much out to everybody as possible. A lot of fun things about that game. Obviously, it didn't go the way I completely thought it would, but the second half, more or less, was what I expected. Overall thoughts on the game, Joe? I mean, for me, I think, the Rams, the rush showed to start the game. The first half, I thought John Gruden, with, the first 15 plays being scripted, had an excellent game plan. I thought, he came in and, he targeted the fact that, look, this defensive line, and I think this will be a trend this year, they're going to force offenses to have to play the dink and dunk game, and the Rams, I don't think, got the production out of the linebacker spot, aside from Corey Littleton. I thought Ramik really struggled watching a little bit of the All-22. I haven't gotten around to the whole game yet. But, overall, I do think that he had the right game plan. I thought they really did a nice job, and they couldn't stop, Jared Cook in the first half. But in the second half was all Rams. And the reason being, I don't know what... I wasn't really sure what Gruden was doing. It looked like, they were still running that quick passing game and everything to keep away from the defensive line. But, at the end of the day, they moved away from Jared Cook. And I thought the Rams really took advantage as well, forcing 3 turnovers on Derek Carr. They were still able to get pressure on him. And I thought the offense, despite, the early hiccups, I thought the offense looked good. So, what were your thoughts?
Yeah, I think you stole my thunder a little bit on the Raiders game plan. I mean, I think that the story of the game was that the Raiders had the good first half game plan, and the Rams made the good halftime adjustments. I mean, really, you got your first taste of an opposing team kind of targeting some of those linebackers. I thought Corey Littleton had a much better game than maybe some people may have thought. Overall, he had a tremendous game when you include the turnover at the end. Considering it's his first game, as the start, as the starter, not as a fill-in. So other bits, obviously once they started to turn the screws a little bit and come out of the second half and take the lead, and then you could see, they kind of got the Raiders out of their game plan a little bit and forced them to have to, you would have thought they would have thrown down the field a little bit more, but I thought one of the best stats of something you probably have seen is the fact that they had 31 pass attempts and only 9 were to receivers. So certainly it just goes to, it's your first glimpse of what other teams are going to do to attack this defense. And I think on first glance maybe Sue and Donald, you didn't hear a ton from them. Simply because Oakland is going, trying to go quick. Once you watch the game back, Donald and Sue and Brockers are doing their thing up front, and the secondary obviously is dominating. And really this defense is the difference between getting shutouts and being a normal NFL defense. It's just going to be how some of these young guys in the linebacking core develop and what the health is like. Certainly Corey Littleton, you could see why they've invested so much in him and given him that role. One thing I do want to go back and look to see how Dominique Easy looked at outside linebacker. That was kind of a surprise start there. So that was kind of a quiet kind of move during training camp, and be interesting if they can get some production out of him at that position. It can both extend his career and solve this problem for the Rams. I think that's one of the more interesting developments of the last couple of weeks with the Rams.
I 100% agree, Joe. It's really funny because this reminds me so much of the move when the Rams, tried to explain to us all that, Jamon Brown was going to be the right tackle. That obviously didn't end up panning out. And it also kind of reminds me of when they tried to say that Louis Trinca-Passat was going to start next to Aaron Donald and Michael Brockers. And, I think it's funny because those things didn't even make it to week 1. And here you are, you hear nothing about this. I mean, Passat was starting next to Donald and Brockers like all of training camp. And Jamon Brown pretty much moved to right tackle until they kind of scrapped that plan for week 1. It's like, this is the one that you didn't hear anything of, and then all of a sudden it came out of nowhere. He comes off the PUP list, and all of a sudden now he's an outside linebacker, and you see him like at the end of the depth chart, and you're like, okay, it'll probably take him a little bit. Nope, they threw him right in there on the edge. I loved it personally. I really like Matt Longacre, so I don't really care who starts out of those two. I think they're both capable, and I think that's why Longacre still logged a healthy amount of reps. To me, aside from Ibukam, who led the outside linebackers in reps, I feel like when you look at what they have, this is a rotational position, and that's fine. They got a lot of production out of Dom Easley in this game. I thought he was very impressive. They got some solid production out of Longacre. They got that one play. It's funny, Joe, is they had Justin Lawler in for one play. It ends up, it kind of fell in front of him because the linebacker fell and he got a tackle for a loss of 3 yards. That was the only play he played. So, I think he'll be part of that. And then you talk about Okoronkwo later on in the year and Trayvon Young, who was, inactive. I think that they have a nice rotation, and, a lot of this is because, Dom Easley looks like he's going to fit in this role. And I think, these are the little things that, a guy like Wade Phillips adds that, just some random defensive coordinator does not. The creativity and the openness, the open-mindedness to basically take a player that may not fit the system, but not give up on him, even though he's coming off his 3rd ACL injury, and, just kind of throw caution to the wind and see, look, maybe he wasn't going to start. He was a former starter. Maybe he's not going to start now with Sue, but we like him so much we want him to be out on the field, so we throw him at outside linebacker. I love the move, Joe, and I think it's going to pay dividends.
And then in terms of negatives, I thought, one positive we should point out is I thought that they did a good job of handling kind of the issues when they were down and not panicking, although I'm sure some in the Rams fan base were panicking. I thought they did a good job of, kind of staying the course and making adjustments and like we spoke of earlier. I think negatives, you go back to what we talked about in the pregame or the preseason podcast last week. This team, the number one issue offensively is red zone production. I don't think, you had one, they scored on their first red zone drive on the Gurley run. But really, I don't think they played very well in the red zone. I think they were 2 of 6 in terms of touchdowns, 2 of 7, something like that. And I think it's pretty fitting that, Coach steps up, falls on the sword, and basically absorbs the criticism, his own criticism this week, because I think he's kind of deflecting, from maybe the way that Jared Goff played at times. I guess, only Coach would know, what they called and what they expected. And only he would probably be able to grade exactly who's at fault, whether it really is his play calls or whether, Jared missed something. But, I thought it was an average game out of the quarterback. I think you got to give him high marks for not turning the ball over on the road, which is always the number one thing you want from Jared when you're on the road. But, production-wise, they didn't get can't think of a good throw he made in the red zone in this game. And the other aspect of it is certainly they're probably still working back from injury, but the two guys I think may make the difference in the red zone, Gerald Everett and Josh Reynolds, get a combined 7 snaps the entire day. So, maybe that they'll put some stuff on film and then be able to adjust with those guys moving forward. But that's, if I had to pick, nitpick some negatives out of this game, that's where I would go.
Yeah, I definitely hear you there. I think what was really cool, I don't know if you saw it, Joe, but Matt Waldman, friend of the podcast, actually threw together a nice little video talking about Jared Goff's micro movement in the pocket, and that was one of the biggest things in the red zone when he made that pump fake throw, basically completely fooling Arden Key as he went, flying past him. But he had a lot of those. The weirdest thing, Joe, with Jared Goff, he's nothing like Sam Bradford. He reminds me a little bit of Bradford, the way he looks, like he's got that kind of lanky body. But Bradford always, to me, seemed like he was panicked, especially on the road. Goff looks extremely comfortable with the way he throws the football. It's just sometimes it's nowhere near the receiver. The accuracy's not there. Too much velocity. You saw that a couple times. And I think, later on, week 10, if they were to have played the Raiders week 10, that game's going to be a lot different. It's going to be more on the Rams side, especially, with the way Brandon Cooks is able to, get behind the defense. Goff's going to be hitting that throw later on in the year. I think you can chalk it up to rust. On top of it, I don't want to make it too big of a point of it because it is kind of, something that's been around for a while. But the Rams playing on the dirt, I think you could chalk up that drop to kind of a poor throw from Goff to Cooper Kupp. But you have to keep in mind when Kupp was catching that ball, the back of his heel is hitting the dirt. So, I'm not saying it's an excuse or anything, but I'm just saying, there were times where, Zerline missed the field goal. Goff kind of lost his footing at one point. I don't know if, that's not really going to be a huge factor because, well, let's be real here. There's only one stadium that has that. So, it's not anything to put too much stock into, but I think that definitely, that did cause something. And perhaps, Joe, it led to Pharoh Cooper and Mike Thomas being injured, which will bring us to our next point.
Good segue.
So really unfortunate stuff here. Pharoh Cooper, who had the most unfortunate postseason you can imagine for his position, was the best returner in the league statistically by far. Put the Rams at one point, the Rams were averaging placing the ball at the 31-yard line, which is huge. I mean, he was literally giving the Rams everything he could out of the return game and basically opening the offense up to even more opportunities. But the issue was this. In the postseason, he turned the ball over 3 times. Well, he tried to come back from that after not really playing a ton in the preseason. He caught a touchdown, and I thought he looked pretty solid and crisp as a route runner on the offense. I was looking forward to seeing him in the offense. Well, unfortunately, he gets hurt in this one. It's why you saw Cooper Kupp back out there to return the punt. It looks like it's pretty serious, honestly. It's an ankle injury. He hits IR. No word yet on Mike Thomas. I believe he has a groin injury and probably might hit IR as well. But the Rams did listen to Rams Twitter, and they did sign JoJo Natson, the preseason. I thought he was a preseason standout. He led. What was the stat that you tweeted out, Joe? He led the whole.
He led the entire NFL in all-purpose yardage.
Yeah, so there you go. I'm really happy for him because shame on the NFL that he wasn't on a roster already. I don't know what more you can do as a returner in preseason. But then again, I mentioned the tweet. He could be an option. They had some in-house options. I know everyone wanted to see John Kelly. I mentioned the option Akeem Hunt, who was actually top 5 in the league in returning for the Kansas City Chiefs last year. He's not even on a roster. So It's one of those weird things where, Dan Bailey, he's the most accurate kicker in football, not on a roster. Kick returners and punt returners are a lot like kickers and punters for that matter. You get hurt and it's like you're getting stashed on IR. Not necessarily always, but you can. It's kind of a cutthroat position, Joe, because you have a kicker that could be the best in the league, and then he gets hurt. You have to kind of place him on IR because you can't carry 2 kickers. And I think with the fact with the return game, somebody like Akeem Hunt being there, I thought he'd be an option, but. I'm really glad that they went out and got Natson. I think, he'll definitely solidify that spot. I don't think he's going to be the best in the league or anything like that, but definitely thought he should have been on a roster, to say the least. But Mike Thomas, his presence is mostly felt in the special teams as a gunner. And losing him, I know, and this is the thing, Joe, I know a lot of people on social media kind of laugh at in a way I think they kind of laugh at special teams being a thing because you have somebody like Coach Bones, but I think when the Rams used to keep guys like Bradley Marquez on the roster, and I think there's a reason for that. I wouldn't discount special teams because there's a reason for why the Rams are one of the best special teams units every year. A lot of it is Coach Bones, but he also brings in the right personnel. So not having Mike Thomas, it does make you wonder if they go out and potentially get a Bradley Marquez, who just was ironically waived to make room for newly claimed Jamil Demby for the Lions. But that's all I have to really say on that. What are your thoughts on the Pharoh Cooper and Mike Thomas injuries and JoJo Natson?
That's a big loss. I mean, Pharoh Cooper was a underrated aspect of how that team won 11-5 last year. I mean, some big time returns, some big moments against, Jacksonville and some other teams. And, he was a weapon, and it's going to be a loss. I don't think, Natson looked good in preseason, but that was preseason. He's certainly not going to be able to be the same exact weapon that Pharoh was, so that you are taking a hit. And it's a significant hit. The guy was an all-pro player, Pro Bowl player. And especially then you lose 2 receivers at the same time. This receiving core looked ironclad, and now you're starting to take on water a little bit. You're down to the 4 guys, and Josh Reynolds is probably still a little banged up with that ankle that kept him out all of preseason. So, I think it's significant, and I do like JoJo Natson. In the preseason, I thought that was the easy call. Everyone was kind of speculating about that yesterday. I think, before they could scoop him back up. But yeah, I mean, you'll never get me to discount special teams. I mean, I think, it is 1/3 of the football game, and it is, just as important as those other 2 legs of the tripod, those other 2 phases. And, this is why this team, part of the reason why this team was so successful last year was, they have so many, difference makers on special teams. So, we'll see where this goes. We'll see what type of player Natson could be in the regular season, but it's a blow for sure.
Yeah, absolutely, and health is very key in the NFL. I mean, a lot of the times you'll see, the favorite to win the Super Bowl might not end up being the favorite by season's end because of injuries. However, what is so important is the offensive line. The Rams really did a nice job of keeping the offensive line, or I don't know if they did a nice job, but the offensive line stayed healthy. Somehow, crossing fingers, they stayed healthy all of last year. Well, this year, they come in, they're still healthy, knock on wood, but they lose Jamon Brown for 2 games due to a suspension. Austin Blythe comes in, and I mean, I haven't, gone back and watched the entire game. I've watched about half of it, but, Pro Football Focus watched the entire game. I watched the entire game when it was live. I can tell you right now, number 66 was moving people. I was very impressed with Austin Blythe. And, I mean, I know he played last year. He got his opportunities when John Sullivan was battling that injury that he wanted to play through. And, I mean, he started all the games. He left, I think, 2 of them. Blythe was really, really impressive, and I don't think that could be discounted. But, what were your thoughts on the offensive line, especially seeing that Pro Football Focus graded them all in the team of the week except only John Sullivan?
Just, huge credit to the coaching staff there. I mean, that's a big feather in their cap. It certainly, really pays to have, it's probably a sign that, it really pays to have this group all back together, have the gang back together again. They're starting to really, reap the benefits of continuity. And then when, you've got one spot that's turned over with Blythe coming in for the suspended Jamon Brown, when he plays the way he did, it improves everybody. So, Austin Blythe certainly, put together a tremendous performance. And if he's able to continue that this weekend, Jamon's going to have to work to get a spot back.
He really is. I definitely agree with you there. With that being said, who are you taking? Austin Blythe or Jamon Brown?
Oh, I'm a Jamon guy, so I'm not going to pick against Jamon. But certainly if Austin continues to play this way, he's going to be the starter. I know you don't like to, have, lose your spot based on an injury. But, going forward, these guys are probably going to be in a competition.
I definitely can see that. And, I gotta say, I think they're gonna roll with Austin Blythe if he continues to play this way. If he goes in against Arizona and he puts up another game like that, it's gonna be hard to justify taking him out when he's the highest ranked guard in the league. With that being said, because of the emergence of Austin Blythe, and now you're talking about having a legit 6th man in either Austin Blythe or Jamon Brown, I mean, will we even see Joseph Noteboom if these guys all stay healthy?
Yeah, I mean, as a tackle, the bottom line is this is not an offensive line that had a ton of depth last year. So, any depth is good depth, and they now have depth in the interior, and Noteboom gives them depth outside. I think probably the answer I should have given you was you don't want to see Joe Noteboom because it means that there's going to be some sort of injury or reshuffle. Let's see Joe Noteboom in 2019. How about that?
Yeah, as the starting left tackle, if Andrew Whitworth, I'll say this right now, with my prediction of the Rams winning the Super Bowl, which I've never done before, Andrew Whitworth will retire after that game. It will happen. I think, he obviously loves football, but come on, Joe. A veteran like that, playing in Cincinnati that long, not being able to win a playoff game. Andrew Whitworth has still not won a playoff game. If he wins the Super Bowl this year with the Rams, he's gone. There's no way that you can tell me he stays. No way.
You just love making predictions, making them left and right this year.
Yeah, I'm the prediction guy. Which, by the way, Like, because, we'll go into our final thoughts. It's a pretty quick podcast because we're going to bring you some other stuff later on in the week. But I will say this. Final thoughts. Wow. Brandon Cooks. Like, you want to tell me somebody that didn't play at all during the preseason that is so new to this offense. I mean, granted, they did trade for him before, OTs and everything, but he's still new. I think he looks just as good as advertised. And, I look at him, I didn't feel like Jared Goff wasn't on the same page with any of his receivers. And when I watched Kirk Cousins, he was clearly not on the same page as Adam Thielen. I watched quarterbacks around the league, on Sunday, and they were not on the same page. Goff looks on the same page with everybody. I mean, that throw to Brandon Cooks was just not a good throw. It wasn't like him and, Brandon Cooks were on the same page. Goff just didn't make a good throw. Twice he did that. But
yeah, I think actually it was the most interceptions thrown in a week one since like 2003 or something. I heard that stat. That was a pretty interesting stat.
Yeah, and then I saw some crazy stat about Jared Goff. I forget exactly what it was. It was something about the road. When he's on the road, it's since the start of last year. This comes from Steve Mason on ESPN Radio. Okay, so since the start of last year, Rams quarterback Jared Goff is 8-1 on the road with 20 touchdown passes and only 2 interceptions. His touchdown to interception ratio on the road over the last 2 seasons is number 1 in the NFL. And I remember when he went 0-7 to start his rookie year, I remember everyone kept pointing at Aikman, who is now in the Hall of Fame. And, they kept saying, well, Troy Aikman got killed, like, when he first started. Like, it was bad. And now, Jared Goff, you look back, and if you go on Google Images and you go to Rams 2016 Jared Goff, I think the first thing will come up is him sitting on the turf looking as miserable as can be. That was just a dreadful year. When you talk about, Greg Robinson being your left tackle, that can't be good. I mean, I'm pretty sure Andrew Denall was starting that year, because there were so many injuries and everything. But, I mean, that hurt. And now, it looks like, granted, Jared Goff didn't have the greatest game, but, from 0-7, he's now above 500 starter for the first time in his career with this win, according to JB Long. And I think it's looking pretty good, unless a giant fallout or a greatest show on turf like collapse, that he'll likely finish his career in the positive side. So after starting 0-7, that would be an accomplishment. But I thought overall, I really liked the additions. Obviously, Ndamukong Suh didn't get a ton of an opportunity to really make some noise, but I just think as this season rolls along, especially with the Marcus Peters that dive in the end zone, that is becoming very famous, that image. I just think with all the additions they made, I think they're all going to contribute in a huge way, and I think you can already see it. I know you're not like in the locker room, but I mean, don't you get the sense that this team just seems different? I know they have different players, but it just seems like they have a different attitude since they brought in guys like Marcus Peters, Aqib Talib. Is that just me, or like, what do you think about that?
Well, I mean, I think this is an evolution from last year. This is a different attitude since they brought in Coach McVay. I mean, I think it's really the coaching staff. They're the ones who have attracted these players, and really they're the ones that deserve the credit for this turnaround and the potential taking of the next step this season. And I think we're just it's hard to make any judgments. We've only seen one game, but a road win, a pretty dominant second half performance in this league is always a good way to start. And then you get a shot. We'll get to it later in the week, but a shot to really open up and build a lead in this division this weekend.
Yeah, and when's the last time the Rams went 2-0? Because they didn't even go 2-0 last year. I mean, like, think about it. When was the last? I mean, I don't even know. Maybe they did that with Fisher.
We'll have to look it up. Good call.
Yeah, I mean, that's the crazy thing. So if they didn't go 2-0 last year and they went 11-5, I mean, you might have to go way back. Probably greatest show on turf. But, you know, I definitely I was impressed with their way to respond. And my parting thought, Joe, is this. I tweeted about it. I was watching this game with my father, and, you know, he reminded me. He's like, you know, this is a game where the Rams, for years, were like what the Raiders are tonight. We should have won this game. We let this game get out of hand. Except you shouldn't have won this game because you let this game get out of hand. You didn't do the necessary things to win the game. So I felt like, you know, really more often than not, that game really stuck out to, my father and I. Obviously, that's the first Monday Night Football win in a long time. The last time they won, I believe it was against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, coached by John Gruden. But, you know, I think the biggest thing about that is this isn't your old Rams anymore. You know, the Rams are winning football games that, you know, maybe they didn't start off that great. They still got it together. They did it last year. They're doing it this year. And I think that's the funniest thing when you start to realize you take off the fan goggles and you're like, oh, well, I guess the Rams their record really was what they were, 8-8 or 7-9 or 6-10. They didn't deserve to win that game because they just didn't win the game. But yeah,
you are what you are. You are what your record says you are in this league.
And you've said that more times than I can count on this podcast. So, but you have any final thoughts yourself?
No, I mean, I think you have to. You know, it's overall a confident performance to go on the road, win going away, win in a dominating the second half, and I think it's just one. I think that the only downside probably is that injury. I think you made a good point that already you're starting to see maybe that. This team, the biggest opponent for this team is going to be injuries, because if you keep this team together, it's going to be hard pressed for anybody else in this league to compete with it, certainly on a talent perspective. So they got to keep this team healthy. And, I think that's why you probably see Coach McVay limiting practice even this week. I joked the other day that, after, proving that the preseason is overrated, he's going after the full practice week this week because they're cutting down on practices and going to practice. They gave him a couple extra days off. So, we'll see what happens. But, certainly good signs for Rams fans in week one.
Yeah, definitely good signs. Steve Young did say, them not playing in the preseason, they could be sacrificing a couple early games early in the season, but it's all about the long-term benefit, and that's to stay healthy going into the year and to win a Super Bowl. I don't necessarily agree they'll drop some games early, but I think that Sean McVay made the right move with the preseason games, and, we'll see. For Jake Ellenbogen, he's Joe Curley. This is a podcast, guys. It's episode 120, and it is following the Rams' beatdown, second half beatdown, tale of two halves, of the Oakland Raiders, 33-13. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. And if you're interested in some Sean McVay media, shameless plug in there for Bleacher Report. Our friend Adam Lefko, who came on our podcast, he has a pretty awesome show with Chris Sims. It's called the Sims and Lefko Show. They actually have a show now. It's on Bleacher Report social media. So Sean McVay was on there, so check that out. They're doing some pretty cool stuff over there. All right, guys. If you guys enjoyed, subscribe, leave a review, and with that being said, you guys take care.